Hello and welcome to MICE, the Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo. I'm your host, Jordan Stillman, and this is Fully Funded, a Kickstarter Q&A. Before we get started, I want to take a minute to thank Kickstarter for sponsoring the month of MICE. Kickstarter is a funding platform with a mission to help bring creative projects to life. They believe that art and creative expression is essential to a healthy and vibrant society, and the space to create it requires protection. Also, we'd love to thank all of our arts advocates. These are major contributors who help sustain MICE and allow the show to grow year after year. MICE is produced by the Boston Comic Arts Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization that funds comic arts festivals, individual artists, and educational programs for the greater Boston community. If you like what we're doing, please consider making a donation today using the donate button in this session. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button labeled Ask a Question. Please use that button to ask or vote up any questions you may have throughout the session. Also, feel free to use the chat feature to say hello. I see many of you have already done that. Hello, welcome. Finally, we will be streaming this panel to our Facebook page at facebook.com/MICEXPO for audience members who would like to use the automatic closed captioning function that Facebook Live offers. And now I would like to introduce our moderator, Olivia Li. She's a cartoonist and artist based in New York City, whose work focuses on mental health and marginalized perspectives, told through stories of magic, myth, and the lives of urban ambiverts. She's run 2 successful Kickstarter campaigns to publish Boundless Volume 1, which is a science comics anthology, and All in the Family, a graphic memoir by L.B. Lee. Thank you so much, Olivia. Please take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to introduce our guest from Kickstarter, Oriana Leckert. She is the Senior Outreach Lead for Publishing and Comics at Kickstarter, where she helps creators bring a broad range of literary projects to life. She's written and edited for Vice, MTV News, Slate, Hyperallergic, Gothamist, Atlas Obscura, and many more. And her first book, Brooklyn Spaces, 50 Hubs of Culture and Creativity, grew out of a multi-year project chronicling the rise and fall of under-the-radar creative places across New York City. Hi, Oriana. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So do we want to kind of just jump right in? I see you have a bunch of stats for us. Do you want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I thought we would just start by saying this is a cursed year, but it is a really good time to be doing comics on Kickstarter. The comics projects over Kickstarter's 10-year history have raised $126 million from 866,000 backers. More than 10,000 comics projects have been funded on the site, and 2020 is already our best year ever, with more than $20 million raised. Last year was our previous best year, and we raised $17 million for comics all year. So we're at 20 million this year, and it's only October. And the success rate for comics projects right now is 74%, which is more than double the average success rate site-wide. Comics, yay!
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of amazed that that 2020 has gotten in so much money when it's been so bad.
It's been so,
Yes.
you know, I mean, but
People
actually, like,
comics.
what we think is happening is that, you know, it's so bad everywhere, but people are showing up in such a real way for creative projects. I mean, there was, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a real concern among the creator community that, you know, it would be wrong or in bad taste to launch, like, you know, a whimsical, lovely creative project when everybody's having so much trouble. But I think, you know, I mean, all of us, I think, have spent much of our lockdown time watching TV and reading books and, you know, really appreciating art and culture. And so I think that, you know, those who have the means, even a little bit, to support creative work really want to do it right now.
Yeah, I think just we still need art no matter what's going on in the world, and sometimes kind of because of what's going on in the
Yeah,
world.
often more than ever when things are really terrible.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty kind of straightforward look at the process of putting together your Kickstarter campaign and following it through until the end. So when Oriana and I were talking about this, we came up with kind of like 4 different stages that it really goes through. So really, your Kickstarter campaign, the process of putting it together starts before you actually are thinking about doing a Kickstarter campaign. And it's about building your community, and it's your audience and your peers. So do you kind of want to talk about that, Oriana?
Yeah, totally. I'm also realizing how drastically differently my face looks with the different color slides. I will think about that the next time I'm making a slide deck. Yeah, so I think this starts with, when people think about crowdfunding, everybody thinks about the funding part, but the other half is the crowd. You need to know how to assemble your crowd if you're going to be successful at asking them to help fund your creative project. So laying the groundwork to have a crowd, to talk to people who care about the work that you're doing is absolutely the most crucial first step. These are just like some broad steps that I laid out when I was kind of thinking this through. Obviously, social media is going to be the main way that people are building, community outside of the sort of your inner circle. My uncle calls it the bar mitzvah crowd, folks bigger than, your mom and your childhood best friend and your teacher. If you're looking to gain entree into a creative community, whether if you're, an illustrator sharing Instagram, if you're a writer on Twitter, obviously, if you're beginning to plan for a Kickstarter campaign, don't think that you need to suddenly develop a presence on every single social network. Don't waste your time. Start where you're strongest, where you already have some traction. And find creators who share common interests. If you're writing queer fantasy set in a post-apocalyptic world, find other people who are telling queer stories and, writing about fantasy. And share your work where you can. I come half and half out of the publishing world and the media world. So there's certainly a lot of opinions about giving your work away for free. But I think with comics, it's a good idea to have, to be willing to share a little bit of your work, to let people know what you do and what it's like. You can also ask for critiques. You can swap critiques, for people to get a sense of who you are. Once you're really starting to plan for a campaign, or really even to be serious about building community, start collecting email addresses, whether that's a landing page on your website, whether you're making a newsletter, something like that. But you want people to get in the habit of hearing from you, so that the first time you email them is not to say, hey, can you give me money today? So, this is part of letting people track your journey, sharing your progress in your creative life. And then one other point that I thought was relevant is, especially in the comics world, anthologies are huge. So if you've got, if 4 other people who are writing, vampire westerns, it's probably time for a vampire western anthology. Whatever, kind of cool niche you can find, get some other folks who are doing the same thing. And then, if you're going to run a crowdfunding campaign, then you get to pile everybody's networks together. Actually, anthologies is the most successful subcategory in both comics and publishing on Kickstarter, for exactly this reason, because one person, no matter how hard you work, your network that you can reach is finite. So if you're stacking 5 or 10 or 20 people's networks, all of your efforts are going to go that much farther.
Yeah, that's something we really found when we were doing the Boundless Kickstarter. It was an anthology, and we had, I think, 44 artists and writers who contributed to it. And that the network was spread wide in that case. Our goal was 8,000, and we ended up hitting 18,000, and that was definitely related to, I think, just having so many people in the book who wanted to share. And that actually kind of leads into something that I think is kind of relevant here, which is the question that creators kind of have to ask themselves: who is your audience who's not in the comics crowd? Because, you know, I think in comics networks, social media, I'm on comics Twitter all the time. And so you're always going to be seeing these great projects that are comics from all sorts of different creators. But also you kind of have to be looking at your own project, your book, or whatever it is, and saying, who is outside of this community who wants what I'm making? So for Boundless, which was science comics that had this like educational angle kind of, so we were reaching out to anyone who wants to like learn about science. It has all of these different stories that have cool new things that, you know, as an editor, I learned a lot from that book. And then with All in the Family, which is a graphic memoir about some pretty heavy, intense stuff that L.B. Li, the artist, went through. So it had this angle of introducing like a mental health, a mental illness, trauma related thing that you don't really see much in media and art except told by people who do not have it, and terrible tropes and stuff like that. So getting it from the angle of the artist, who also had their own community of non-artists, but people who have this, who live with this condition. So their own community that they'd had for years was also a big source for us of people who were interested in the project. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, okay. So do we want to start talking about actually creating the campaign?
Let's do it. Next slide. Oh wow. Now it looks like I'll just be blushing for this whole section.
Yeah, no, it's a feature, not a
bug. Yeah, so all right, when you are beginning to think about building your Kickstarter campaign, it is so astonishing to me how much trouble even like writers and artists have describing their own work.
It's marketing.
Yeah,
it's hard.
It is totally hard. I completely get it, but this is like a really, really important thing. You know, we all live on the internet. We all know how often you click on a link and are like, oh, it's so many words, and you go away. Don't let that happen to your campaign. Like in my opinion, every campaign should start with like, you know, I mean, I guess you can tell I come out of journalism, but like a nut graph, like a sentence or two that sums up the whole project. And if some, you know, ADD addled potential backer only can manage to read 2 sentences, they will still have an understanding of what you're doing. So it is really cool to then fill in all the background of, you know, how you came to this work and why it's important to you and all the things you're doing. But start strong, make an elevator pitch, a couple of sentences at most. And definitely talk about who you are. A lot of people, there's a campaign that just launched today. It is the inaugural graphic novel for a brand new publishing company. And the woman who runs the publishing company was so excited to share the story and the writer and the artist that it was not until all the way down the page that she got to the point where this was the first ever cast iron press book. And I was like, no, that's amazing. You should absolutely share that. So definitely talk about who you are. I'm constantly encouraging creators to have a bio section, have links to all of your platforms. Yeah, so those are, you know, top 2 things: elevator pitch and who you are. Very important. The Kickstarter video drives a lot of people crazy. I always share this. My husband is a very visual person. He watches videos on the internet all day long and is not super interested in reading a lot of text. I am completely the opposite. I don't want my devices to make noise at me at all. I only want to read the words. So I feel like putting in a Kickstarter video, it allows you to cover both of those bases. You should not think that a Kickstarter video has got to be a massive Hollywood style undertaking with like super high production value and all of this. Like, simple is fine. You're already working in a visual medium, so it should be easy to, you know, slide together some of your art, put some music, click. These videos should be a minute long, like 2 minutes absolute tops. But even the folks like my husband are not going to watch a 5-minute video. You really just want it to be a teaser to get people into the rest of the story. I did not put a bullet point, but write your campaign story. That is also pretty important. So that would be the next thing. Create unique and compelling rewards. I personally think rewards are the most important, like the central aspect of the Kickstarter proposition. What's different about Kickstarter is you're not asking people for charity. You're not asking them to invest money with some kind of like expectation of return. You're inviting them to join you on a creative journey. And you're giving them things in return, whether that's sneak peek of like, you know, a new character sketch, or an enamel pin made out of the spaceship that your heroine flies in. Like, there are lots of ways to come up with rewards that bring people into the work that you're doing. I could talk for a very long time about rewards. I won't do that now, but it is really, really important to like, I just think it's what makes this kind of fundraising uniquely compelling. But don't forget about your budget. I have endless conversations with creators who want to make mugs and t-shirts and tote bags and like all sorts of swag and merch, which will ruin your life. It is horrible to ship a mug. It's gonna break. It is crazy to make t-shirts, which you need to offer in like at least 5 sizes and often several colors. And how are you going to communicate with the manufacturer when you don't know how many people are going to back your campaign and what size they're going to be? It's wild. Don't do these things. Please. But what you can do, especially with projects that involve something like a book, think about flat things that you can slide into the book: bookmarks, postcards, prints, stickers, all sorts of like little merchy items that are cheaper to produce and will not bump you out of being able to use media rate shipping, which is crucial. I don't remember what I meant when I said prepare for a strong launch. I think probably all the stuff before about building your community and knowing, okay, so like day one, launch day, who are you going to email? What are you going to say to them? How are you going to tweet about it? Things like that. But actually, I should have cut this bullet, sorry, because we're going to talk about all that part on the next slide. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, I think that prepare for a strong launch, it kind of fits in between this and the next slide, because I think we were talking about how also you want to get people in your corner and on board before that, but we'll talk about that after. I did get some kind of questions specifically about rewards, like, I guess you kind of covered some of this. What should I consider when I'm thinking about rewards? Definitely, how much harder is this reward going to make shipping and also my life? But also just a question, do you need extras at all? Like, some people, they just want the book. They just want to make the book, and they kind of just want their audience to just want the book. Like, how important is it to get in extras that supposedly pull people in? And also on top of that, stretch goals. What do you think about stretch goals?
Totally. Great questions. So no, do you have to have a wild array of rewards? Definitely not. It is absolutely true that many people are essentially using a Kickstarter as a pre-sale campaign. They want to know how many people are interested in buying their book, what kind of print run that will look like, that sort of thing. I think, so I think it's really nice to have 1 or 2 rewards that are lower than the book tier, because there will be plenty of people who want to see you succeed, but maybe don't necessarily desperately want to have the book or maybe can't actually afford the book right now. And as per, part of our conversation about building community, many people, will start with a small Kickstarter campaign for like individual issues, and then later make a bigger campaign to print their first collection, or, uh, Kickstarter is only like one step on like presumably a long creative journey. So everyone who backs you, even for $1, that's someone who's just paid $1 to be on your mailing list. That's someone you can keep talking to throughout this campaign. Maybe they'll even increase their backing as things proceed, and to the next campaign. And you can roll them into your Substack or your newsletter or whatever. And, they become invested and being a part of your community. The higher tier rewards, yeah, look, it can, it depends on what your needs are and what your goals are. I think that offering things like limited edition prints of some of the art in your book, working, maybe asking other artists who are in your network to share, to donate rewards, whether it's a copy of their book or a print or something like that. I think that stuff is all really nice, and it'll offset things a little bit. Like, a pre-sale campaign is very straightforward. I made, 50 people bought the book, I make 50 books. But if 50 people buy the book and another 10 people buy like nicer stuff that is, kind of upsell, then you've built yourself a buffer. You've I think also the rewards can really appeal to like different kinds of demographics. Probably we all have like one of our parents' rich friends who will not mind throwing $100 at something, even if the book is only 20. Like, give them something. Have something for that person, because why not get an extra $100 if you can? So that's my kind of like, I guess I shouldn't have made it seem like you are required to have 100,000 rewards. Like, do not kill yourself. That really, like, I hope that the underlying message here is like, make a campaign that is not going to ruin your life. But I think that there are a lot of things that you can do with cool rewards that will ultimately like build your community, make things more exciting, and that sort of thing. So yes, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I just wanted to mention there are also rewards that cost nothing other than maybe some time to produce. Like even just like tacking on maybe extra $5 and you get a signed book, or like a little sketch, or like one of the higher tier rewards, you can get a page of original art because you already made that. And so now you can sell it basically.
Totally.
Yeah.
And also digital rewards, which I can't believe I didn't think of, which I didn't mention already. Like I've seen people doing all kinds of like very cool, weird playlists, like a music to listen to while you read my book. Another campaign I worked on did like a playlist for your plants when you're out of the, I mean, not that any of us are out of the house all day anymore, but there's plenty of, and if
if you're tired of talking to them.
Yeah, exactly.
They still have something to listen to.
Totally. So, and if, we have, I think the two most popular articles on the like Kickstarter blog site are two roundups of like 96 reward ideas that you haven't thought of yet. And there's tons of digital stuff. We did an updated version in, I think, April, that was 70 rewards that you could make in quarantine. That's really targeted toward digital stuff, cheap stuff, like things that you don't have to go and like have a lot of materials for. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're a creative person. It's very likely that you can come up with additional creative things that will be quirky and fun and won't ruin your life.
Yeah, and I had another note that it's good to, using your account, back some other projects if you haven't already. And I don't want to sound cynical about this, but it looks better if you have also contributed to the community, just in terms of, so you're not just like, zooming into Kickstarter and saying, give me money and then I'm gonna get out of here. I mean, like I am one of those people who will just, throw $1 to get on the mailing list because maybe I don't have the budget to buy like a $50 hardcover or something, but I'm really interested in the project, so I still want to hear about it. I think like just being a part of the Kickstarter community also kind of like educates you on how to run these yourself, because you see all these campaigns being successful.
I was exactly going to say that. The more campaigns you back, like, you know, if you've never backed a campaign, find 20 campaigns and back them for $1. And for each one, read the campaign, see how, excuse me, see how this creator and that creator has organized their ideas, what their balance is of like images versus text, how many different reward tiers they've got, like familiarize yourself with the way other people are doing it. And also, yeah, lend your support to the creative community that you are hoping will in turn support you.
So just a couple of other little things. Is there like a specific day of the week or time of day that is recommended for launch? Like when are people on Facebook more? And would you say it's better to have like a long or short campaign? Because you can have like a really short one, or you can have like a 90-day one, I think is the cap, right?
Geez, I don't know what the cap is actually. I would never let anybody run a 90-day campaign. If you're working with me, you are not running a 90-day campaign.
I mean, that would be so stressful, I feel. Then you have to be
horrible
on edge for 3 months.
Totally. Yeah, no. So yes, I do have answers to all of those questions. Well, so the first one's time of day, day of week. Let me caveat this with we are in a global pandemic, and all of the conventional wisdom is a little bit out the window. I will tell
Everyone's always online.
Right, exactly. I mean, what we've been telling creators for 10 years is you want to launch on a Monday or Tuesday because you're just going to get more people looking at their screen on a Monday morning than you will on like a Sunday afternoon. Again, right now, who knows? We all online all the time. So maybe that doesn't, I don't know, but we still do.
Maybe that's why the numbers are good this year.
Maybe so. Yeah, I mean, in fact, we spent such a long time telling everybody to launch on Mondays that it started to become like the site was like glutted with new Monday projects. So now we're telling people to launch on Tuesdays. This stuff is very like, you know, nuancy, and it probably doesn't matter. I would just say, think about who your community is and what they're doing. Like, even in a pandemic on a Sunday afternoon, I'm hoping to be riding my bike to a park and not looking at my computer or my phone. Like all of this is because it's really good to have a strong launch. It's really a good predictor of how successful your campaign is going to be. So if you sort of like launch without thinking about it and then go make a sandwich and like run around the block and then come home and like send a few emails and like kind of slow your way into it, that's not going to be the strongest start. It would be way better to have all your emails pre-written, all of your social media posts ready to go, press launch, deploy, and just like get it out there so people start coming in right away. And if you want that to happen, don't do it when the majority of your potential backers are asleep.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly because it was 4 years ago, but and you know, Jordan is right here on screen, and she was one of my collaborators on Panelist, but I may be misremembering, but I think we both took the first day off work to go crazy with promoting and everything, and I'm pretty sure it was a Monday.
But no, I mean, that's actually a really important point, only to say that like take the campaign seriously, you know, really like you don't necessarily have to take the day off work, but you should spend
it's not a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, since I opened with all these like good stats and like it is an awesome time to launch a comics campaign, but like one of the things that we have fought against on Kickstarter for years is that early on, the only Kickstarters you ever heard of were these like wildly successful, like 6 figures for potato salad and all this stuff. And so
I forgot about that.
Yeah, we have not forgotten. But there's this really pernicious sort of like belief that if you kind of like derp your way through setting up a campaign and like let go, like you will be showered with magical internet money. Like that's not true. You gotta work for it. Like so all of these things, all of these tips are like, be deliberate about the choices that you're making, about how you run your campaign when you launch it. The corollary when you end it, there's a button on all campaigns that says remind me, where if someone's like, oh, this is cool, but I'm I gotta wait till I get paid or whatever, but I don't want to miss my chance, you can click that button, and 48 hours before the campaign ends, Kickstarter will send an automatic email to all of those folks. So similarly, we tell people to end on like a Thursday or Friday because you want that email to come also like earlier in the middle of the week. You don't want that email to come on Saturday night and get lost. So that's the start
and if they're like me, then they're thinking, I'm getting my paycheck on Friday.
Yeah,
Maybe.
totally. Totally.
What would you define as a strong launch?
So a lot of creators are like, I was told that you have to be 23.9% funded by like hour 4, or you're not. Like, nope.
I mean, it's different for every project.
Exactly. It's different for every project. And also like, I don't want to like set benchmarks that if you don't hit, you will then like believe that
you're depressed for the rest of the campaign. Yeah.
Do not do that. Yeah. No, I mean, start strong means you want activity. You want to see like a good number of people certainly clicking, hopefully converting to backers. I don't want to get more sort of like specific than that. But if if it's been 24 hours and you only have 3 backers, like you're gonna need to work harder.
Hustle.
Yeah, I mean, because there's also like some psychology goes into this too, where like if you as a potential backer go to a campaign that's trying to raise $50,000 and they've raised like $20, you're like, I don't, even if it's only day 2, you're like, I don't think they're going to make it. I'm not going to bother.
Right.
So you want it to look exciting and active and like people care about this thing. Everybody wants to be on a winning team.
Yeah, it's totally psychological. You're like, ooh, I don't want to be the first backer.
Totally. Yeah, totally. I feel like there was one other sort of like technical specky. You had asked about stretch goals. Should I loop back to stretch goals?
Why don't we make stretch goals a stretch goal for our time? Because we're already halfway through.
What a good moderator.
Okay, so do we want to move on to, at least for me, this is dreaded marketing.
Dun, dun, dun. Now I am all yellow.
Yeah, because this is definitely the biggest question I deal with, both for myself when I'm looking inward, and also what I hear from friends is just how do I handle marketing, especially if I hate it, if I'm just one of those artists who's like, oh, I don't want to talk about myself. I don't want to be like flooding everyone's timeline with me talking about myself. What do you have to say to people?
I have so many things to say about that.
Fantastic.
I think the first thing I would say is you don't have to think about it as marketing, because most of us, when we think about marketing, think about Cole Haan and Slack doing a collab on a horribly ugly pair of sneakers.
The Slack shoes.
Totally. Don't know. Awful. I would not want my art to be in the same category as the Slack shoes.
Oh, but it's so funny.
It
got clicks.
It got a lot of attention. It was in our company Slack. We all laughed about it. So that's not maybe the best way to market yourself. But I mean, as a person who I've lived my whole life as a creator, surrounded by creators, like, of course I understand this sort of like visceral hatred of marketing, but like, really, you're just sharing your work. Like, this is shit that you are proud of, that you have worked hard on, and you could write the most beautiful and incredible, perfect graphic novel or comic book or webcomic series in the world. And if nobody reads it, that can still, like, maybe that's your goal. We all measure success differently. But if you're trying to run a crowdfunding campaign, you've got to get people to care. So that's really what it's about, like finding ways to let people know that you've done something really cool that you want to share with them. Like, again, I mean, this is obviously, I'm biased, but this is why I think Kickstarter is like the best place for this kind of thing, because again, you're not saying like, I just want to like sit around and eat chips all day. Can you give me money to do that? Like, no, you're saying like, hey, wow, I did a thing and I'm so stoked about it. Like, I want to share it with you because I think that you're going to want to like come with me on this journey. So that, I think, like, if there's any amount of sort of like wrenching reframing you can do in your artist's brain to allow you to feel good about promotion, try to do that first. Like, give yourself some little pep talks. And then, so here's the like very basic mechanics of like marketing a Kickstarter campaign. So the first thing you're going to do, you're going to assemble your bar mitzvah crowd. You're going to go through your inbox. You're going to figure out all of the people who are the most likely to be the most kind and willing to support what you do. This can be professional colleagues. This can be Insta fans. This can be obviously your family. But the highest conversion rate on Kickstarter in every category for every kind of project is individual emails. So write a really nice email. Write 5 versions of a really nice email. Again, like, hey, I did a thing. It's cool. Like, I really hope you'll check it out. Put the link a couple of times. Send that email as soon as you launch. If you are like if you have a different kind of like sort of bigger following, this is, I guess, getting bigger than your bar mitzvah crowd, you can send a teaser email a week before that says, some cool thing is coming. I'll tell you about it on Tuesday. But get that email out on launch day. You can send another email in the middle of the campaign. And then I think if you think that your community can stomach it, send another one like 48 hours before the end. Like, hey, just reminding you, this awesome thing. Remember, I did this really awesome thing. Come on by. This is your last chance. And you can share in the middle of the campaign, like, here's some press we got. Here's a podcast that I went on. Here's like a cool, tweet, a cool retweet of somebody who I really respect. Share stuff with your audience and let them get excited with you. So that's emails, number 1. And it should be like, that should be the most labor intensive, and also you can do it the least. Social media is the opposite. You should do it the most, like all the time, like every day. But think about things to say. This is, I think, part of the stuff what I was thinking when I wrote Start Your Campaign Strong. Like, that doesn't mean that every day at 3 p.m. you should tweet, have you backed my Kickstarter yet? Like, that's a bad idea. Don't do that for a month straight. Think about other things that you can do to talk about the work that you're doing. Share elements of the story, like little snippets of it, especially if there are like a few different kinds of elements that would appeal to different sorts of audiences. Tell little bits about your journey and how you came to be doing this work. Find other comics artists or other people who are doing work that is in any way similar, and share their work and talk about how it inspired you to do your own. Like, we all know how to do social media. So think about how to do social media, all with the goal of like letting people know about this really cool thing that you're doing that you want to share with them. So emails, social media. I said this, I think, at the beginning, but I just want to reemphasize it. Like, don't start up a new social media network if it's not one that you have already established some like traction on. If you are baller at Instagram and you hate Twitter, do your work on Instagram. Don't get on Twitter just to promote your campaign. That's, yeah. So emails, social media. And then there's a sort of like, and then signal boosters. So if you can identify before you start, who do you know? I'm not talking about influencers. I'm not talking about celebrities, but like, who do you know who's got a network that's a little different than yours, slightly adjacent, but still people who might care about what you're doing. In the same way that you're going to be asking your friends, hey, can you throw $20 to my book? Some of your friends, you can say, I don't want your $20, but can you tweet? Can you write about this in your cool Substack? Can you have me on your podcast to talk about it? Can you pitch it to your friend who's a reporter at Comics Beat? All sorts of things like that. Like, think about ways that you can, because as I said, I think at some point, your network will always be finite, no matter how big it is. So think about ways that you can build beyond it. Those are the basic building blocks of marketing. Yeah, those are all the things that I said on here. Kickstarter's promotional channels. So Kickstarter we have social channels. We've got a bunch of newsletters. The way that we work those is shifting. We have an editorial team who they're responsible for making the decisions about like what we tweet about and what goes. The newsletters are all becoming more automated. It used to be truthfully a lot more labor intensive for the outreach leads like me to be compiling them and writing them each week. So you know, people often ask like, well, how do I get to be like, how do I get tagged as a project we love? Or how do I get to be in the newsletter?
That's one of the questions
Oh,
on my
good.
list. Yeah.
I mean, this is a squishy answer, but the answer is really like, make a really great campaign. Make the campaign that's the best that you can do. And if you know me, email me. If you don't know me, you can also email me. My email is going to be at the last slide. You know, let people know, and we will probably see it. I mean, there's outreach leads. I have hour blocks on my calendar twice a week to go through every single project in my categories on the sites and like take a look at them. Like, we're definitely, and everybody in the company, all of the engineers, we have a whole Slack channel called Projects We Love. Anybody who works at Kickstarter can like slide projects in and be like, I saw this cool thing, like let's you know, let's give it a little boost.
So what you're
And we do
saying
that as much
is
as we can.
craft a lovable project and it might end
And
up
we
on
will love
Projects
it.
We Love.
Exactly right.
Yeah. You mentioned something in there. I don't know if it really is in any of the list items, but just about like releasing teasers and stuff like that. And I thought that was something that both of my campaigns used. Like with Boundless, it was an anthology, so there were all these different stories. So we were every day or every couple of days or every like amount of money, I don't know, it's been a while, we would like post some pages from another artist or like a whole story or something like that, just like showing more art of like, okay, if you unlock more art, then we'll show you more art. And you know, it kind of is an incentive to keep like for your supporters to keep promoting, and then also for it just, you know, it's a great thing to show. Your campaign just keeps looking different and new and cool.
Yeah, totally.
And then it's a great thing for socials because all of the algorithms promote images over anything else, which but it's good for socials because then you have more images to post every day and they're not repeats.
Totally. And if you have contributors, if you know, especially if you're doing an anthology or, you know, if you, anybody who's participating in the project should be promoting the project.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if you have a letterer, or if you have like someone who's just doing the cover, you should really try to make sure that they're sharing it with their networks. Or one thing you can do, if you have, you know, if you've hired someone just to do your cover, you can write one, you know, tweet or Instagram post or whatever that is just like a really glowing endorsement of that person. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to have to retweet it, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. Are we next? Clock. We want to make sure we have some time for questions at the end. So fortunately, this is kind of the.
Yeah. Now I'm like back in the dark. This is so funny. These colors. Yeah. So
post campaign.
Now we've funded, it's done. It was a wild success. Everything went incredibly well. Yeah, you have all this money coming. So now your journey really begins. Now you get to make the thing. And I should have said back when we were talking about making a budget, certainly you should be, you know, prototyping. You should know how big in inches and how many ounces your book is going to weigh. You know, whatever you're making, you should know very well, like what it's going to cost to produce it and what it's going to cost to ship it. So you don't want there to be any surprises there.
No surprises. You want to do all the research at the very beginning.
Yeah, way in advance. Don't let yourself get foiled by misunderstanding shipping prices or, you know, binding sizes or, you know, this, if you added a stretch goal teaser, maybe for like a fancy, you know, slipcase, don't let the weight of the slipcase bump you into a different shipping category that you didn't think
That's
of.
Stressing me out.
Right. Think through all the things before you start. Yeah. So you can get your stuff made, you know, easily and know exactly what you're in for when you do. Absolutely keep your backers updated. The Kickstarter, most reward tiers will have like estimated delivery X date. Be generous with yourself when you're setting those. If you are like totally sure you can have your book produced and in people's hands in February, maybe say March just to be safe. And then if there's, you know, a global pandemic or some like radical change in the shipping routes or, you know, some kind of like crazy crisis that you hadn't thought of, backers
Or
on
like a weird
Kickstarter,
tariff war.
totally, totally. Backers on Kickstarter are so forgiving so long as you talk to them. Don't
Mhm.
just like assume that they'll understand that, you know, paperweights changed from China to here on the something because of whatever. Just let them know. Be extremely proactive with like, hey, we're super, super sorry. I was totally hoping we were going to have the, you know, pages in hand by this date. X, Y, and Z happened. Some complications, life got in the way. Here's our new
Yeah.
estimated date. Thank you for your continued support and patience. You
Yeah,
know,
and I just want to underline all of that you just said, because I had experienced and am still kind of experiencing that, because for All in the Family, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Just in terms of being intercepted by a global pandemic. But you know, just like telling people that we're still working on it, we're struggling, but we're getting there, and everyone has been very nice.
totally, totally. I mean, because again, like these
They're
are
your
so
supporters. They want you
exactly.
to succeed.
Exactly. You know, I mean, we say this in many places, but like Kickstarter is not a store. Backing is not
Mhm.
buying. You know, you're not, this isn't like a mass-produced item that like, which even those run into trouble with shipping and tariffs and international whatevers. But this is, it's not that. It's usually a single creator or you know, small group of creators making a delightful, whimsical, beautiful work of art. Like people get it. Sometimes things are a little more complicated than you thought they would be. Just like make sure that you let people know. Um, I think shipping tips, maybe you can speak to better than I can. I was just going to say regarding fulfillment services, there are lots of them. You know, from BackerKit, which is I think kind of the main gold standard, to a wide array of others. In most of the if you're a single creator, if you're doing like an art creative cultural kind of campaign that's like relatively small, I think using a fulfillment service is probably going to cost you more than it would be worth it. I mean, you know, you have to commit to putting a bunch of books in envelopes and licking stamps and all the rest of it. But typically, I think fulfillment services are for like, you know, when you're talking about tens of thousands of backers, when you're making a tabletop board game that has like
A
17
million
different
pieces.
color combinations. Yeah, exactly. Like for those, yes, absolutely get some help. But I think do your research, and if you find one that's amazing and seems worth the money, go for it. But I think it's usually for like a different kind of creator than someone
Mhm.
making a comic book.
Yeah. So instead of shipping tips, I'm gonna, because we have 10 minutes left, I want to ask Jordan if we have
Oh my
any
God, I
audience
talked so
questions.
much.
No, it's good. It like people want information. This is great.
We do have a few questions.
Cool. Give us one.
Let's get into it. So the first question is Bob, and you guys talked about this a little bit at the beginning. Bob asked, don't you need a large following / mailing list to do a successful Kickstarter?
If you are trying to raise $500,000, yes. If you are trying to raise $5,000, no. I mean,
Mhm.
be realistic and know. So here's, okay, I'll try to do this quickly. I can't believe I've talked so much. Yes, I can. When you are thinking about your campaign goal, you really want to think about it from two directions. The first one is how much you need, obviously, as we've just gone over and over. Like, don't ask for less money than will be required to produce and ship the item that you are largely centering your campaign around. But you also want to think about what you can get. You know, if you've only got a few dozen followers on the one social platform where you are a denizen, you should probably not run a 5-figure Kickstarter campaign. You are not likely to get funded. So perhaps you need to either scale down your idea or spend more time building up your community and your network before you embark on a sizable project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we were putting both of the projects I worked on together, we wanted to kind of keep it a manageable size, and we were saying, okay, this is how much that feels like a good print run. So like if this is all I get, this is pretty good. And then we kind of work backwards and we say, okay, to fund that much, build the budget on this, to get that much money, how many people just have to buy the book? Like how many people just have to back at the book level only? And then we say, okay, how many people do I know? How many people do I think will fund this? And then we go from there. And I, at least like the projects that I've been a part of, especially because, you know, print runs, unless you're making like a very beautiful, super fancy book, per unit, if you're going through the right printer, it's going to be fairly manageable. So you kind of just have to do your research on that and say like, okay, if I want, like if my minimum is a 100 book print run and all I can get is 100 books, can I do that? Even just with like the number of friends I have.
Even just with your bar mitzvah crowd.
Will like my extended family help me fund this book? And like my Facebook inner circle or whatever. I haven't been on Facebook in years. I don't know. But yeah,
you know, tailor your expectations, be realistic with yourself, and do the work that is necessary to build the community that you need to accomplish the goals that you're setting out for yourself.
And then it feels really good when you have a very successful campaign that goes like multiple times beyond the fundraising goal.
That is true. All right, here's another one for y'all. So Salvo asks, I am building a Kickstarter campaign. I have entered several perks from €6 to €50. They exist, and 2 perks are early birds. Do you think there's a standard price that facilitates support from people?
Well, I mean, no, because rewards are so different. I mean, I will tell you this, actually. I will tell you that $25 is the most popular reward across the entire website. Wow. $25 is the most popular amount backed, and $100 typically is the tier at which creators make the most money. So there's 2 benchmarks for you. But no, I mean, there's going to be one sort of like reasonable seeming price for a sticker and a different reasonable seeming price for a book and a different one for an art print and, you know, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, I feel like I've had this conversation with so many indie cartoonists and artists that are just like, what should I price my book that'll convince people to buy my book? And
actually, I'm gonna slightly interrupt because I just noticed the question that floated to the top is related. It says, this is from Christopher, who asks, hello, I'm a student attending an animation school. I don't have a comic on Kickstarter, but I'd like to know how you determine how much your product is worth. How does the price determine the level of experience an artist has under their belt?
I would say rule of thumb, and this is just something that, you know, I've had this conversation many times with all sorts of artists, and it's really just, you want to be you want the sale price to be at least 3 times what it costs you to produce it, or else you're not going to be making any money, right? It's just, you don't want to undervalue yourself, definitely. Even if you think that you're underexperienced, whatever, like, people don't know your experience when they're reading your book. They just know that it's a good book that they want to read.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And I really want to also echo, you know, unfortunately, we live in a society that does not value creative practice nearly as much as it should. And I think there's often an inclination, especially with younger emerging artists, to be like, well, it costs this many dollars for the paper, I'll just cover that, and like no money for me. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Pay yourself.
Yeah, pay yourself. Your work is worth it. Yeah, and you know, we all contribute to setting the standards of what people believe creative work is worth. So if you value yourself properly, that's going to, rising tide, lift the boat. That's going to encourage everybody else to do the same.
I love that. All right, we've got more. Questions are flooding in. Does Bob asked, does the graphic novel / comic need to be 100% inked, drawn, and ready for press?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, no,
I mean, you should want to have a decent chunk of it at least, I would say.
I mean, allow that to factor into the promises you make with your campaign. I think, yeah, like, you know, you probably should have started. You probably don't want to be nowhere, because then you really don't know how long it'll take, how many pages it will be, you know, like all of that. But no, you definitely don't have to feel like it has to be like, you know, ready to click the button to send it to the printer in order to run a campaign.
Yeah, and like you still also have that month of work that, or however long your campaign is. Yeah, it doesn't have to be completely finished, but you should definitely have enough to show for it that people can imagine that you're going to complete it. But if you're raising funds to pay a colorist, then, you know, maybe you can have like a couple of sample color pages, but your book isn't colored yet because you don't have money.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, sort of a technical question here. Is it possible, Dirk asks, is it possible to add your backers to your official mailing list, say on MailChimp, in a legal way after your campaign is over?
Oh, legal. I see why you emphasize legal. I mean, I will tell you, I will tell you what is true. If you run a successful campaign, at the end of it, you will get a CSV with name, email address, and reward tier for all of your backers. No one ever asked me before, would a lawyer sanction you copy pasting all of those emails from the spreadsheet to your MailChimp? I feel like most people assume at this point that backing a campaign is being added to a mailing list. But if you are a lawyer asking this question, or if there's a lawyer listening,
we don't know laws.
I'm not telling you to break the law. I'm just telling you what I think people assume.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also a thing if you don't want to run the risk of doing something illegal by adding these people to your mailing list. I mean, you can still send out messages to people on your backer list afterwards. Like I have some artists who I've backed multiple projects from, and every time they start a new project, I get an email from each list, because it's like, okay, I'll get one from the volume 1 list and I'll get one from the volume 2 list. And I'm like, I know you have a new campaign. I've already backed it. But yeah, so if you want to, if you don't want to do something that you don't know if it's technically allowed, then, you know, there's that option.
But yeah, I just, two things super quick. You can, as Olivia said, you can put backer updates on a project forever, and you are often encouraged to. And then also, you will send a backer survey once all the funds are, once everything is moving forward. So I bet, again, I'm speculating, but I'm pretty sure you could put a question in that survey that says, click here to be added to my mailing list, and then you would really be doing the right thing. But again, I'm not a lawyer.
Fantastic. All right, I think we have time for a couple more. Zach asks, why do you think that indie comics are so conducive to crowdfunding?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is a really engaged and collaborative community. I think, there's a joke in like the music category that it's just all the musicians standing in a circle passing the same $5 around and around.
We have that one too. We have that joke.
I think there's definitely a degree of that in comics, but I think that's like really beautiful that like you understand, the amount of work that goes into what you're doing, and you also want to support. There's also a real symbiosis. I mean, in like a lovely way that like if you buy somebody's comic, they're likely to then buy your comic, and like you're both likely to be so much happier after having done so. I also think that the serial element of comics lends itself to a fixed funding type campaign. For a year and a half, I was only working on journalism in Kickstarter, and the proposition for the media of like, give us money to like make digital media. It's like a very different thing to explain than like, I'm going to make a comic book. You're going to hold it in your hand. It's got pages. So I think, you know, the physical nature of the item, the serial nature of the project, the collaborative nature of the community, I would say those are kind of like what, you know, a beautiful confluence of like, heck yeah, comics.
Yeah, and I think like art in general, you know, if you're a comics lover, you're never going to stop looking for comics to read. Like you want more. I mean, like if you're like me, you have too many bookshelves and then not enough space on them, so you start stacking them on the windowsills and on the floor. Which is not, you know,
Perfect.
it's a lifestyle.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think like, and not just the artist too, like the audience, you know, there are people who have never made a comic a day in their life, but they're gonna be stacking books forever, just like me.
All right. I think that's all we have time for today.
Cool.
Well, I just want to say as a super quick last thing, I put my email address here on purpose. I put my Twitter and my Instagram handle here because I meant it. Y'all can totally contact me. Send me your questions. I'm super happy to answer them. It is literally my job, and it's also really fun. So yeah, and thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Mice. I'm so glad we got to do this.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And also, I also just kind of want to advocate for, you know, I worked with Oriana's predecessor on the comics outreach lead title, and she was extremely helpful. Again, as Oriana says, it's her job. And so if you are working on a comics Kickstarter project, ask questions. You will get answers. They will be super helpful. They want to see you succeed.
And buy Olivia's books.
Buy my books.
I heartily recommend that.
They're not available
yet.
online right now. They will be soon. I'm like, I've been redoing my online store because we can't go anywhere.
All right. Well, thanks everyone so much for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. This session is part of the Month of Mice, which is a month of free comics programs, including panel discussions and workshops. If you're interested in this topic, you may also want to check out Making a Career in Comics, which is this Saturday at 4:00 p.m. Eastern. For a full list of sessions, visit miceexpo.org. That's MICEXPO.org. And check out our fundraising raffle where you can win cool prizes like Clip Studio Paint and a Wacom One tablet. It's very exciting. Thank you all so much for coming, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks.